Hi, this is David Kirk. I'd like to do a video on a build log for my BB-8. I would first like to thank the founders of the BB-8 Club, Builders Club, for all the work they put together, all the files that they've provided for plans for 3D printing. Couldn't have done that without y'all. Now, if you're just now starting to build a BB-8, you need to. One thing to think about is that even if you finish this thing, you have to always be careful what you roll it on. You know, like if you had an R2, I don't think you'd worry much about what you roll it on. But for the BB-8, you can scar and scratch the finish. If you're doing the Plan B decals like I did, then you can mess those up. I've already ordered a second set. But now, you always first start with the dome, because even if you get no further, then you have something pretty cool you can sit around your desk. And the dome, all the files are 3D printed. All the panels are 3D printed on the dome, which is pretty nice. Here's some other 3D printed stuff I have. Here's a little castle. Then here's the tower at Isengard. That was printed in 11 pieces. For the dome, the electronics inside of it, I used the Disco Droid that one of the members of the Builders Club created. It's worked out really well. And it comes with a Bluetooth and a micro SD card, and I found a nice little app. I just tried out different apps, and I finally found one that worked pretty well. And you just connect to the thing, and then go to your controls, and then you have different sounds. So anyway, now one thing that I did on the dome is I watched a lot of videos and saw that most people had muffled sound, and there's not much of a place for the speaker to project out. So I went ahead and cut a hole in this thing, and that was a hard decision, but put a little screen in front of it. But I don't regret it at all, because now I have big sound. I think only another builder would notice the screen inaccuracy. But anyway, everything about the dome needs to make it as lightweight as possible. You need to print with minimum infill layers, and then I just sanded down everything afterwards. So my dome started out at 5 pounds, and after a couple weeks worth of work of just doing everything I could to reduce the weight, I got it down to about 4.5 pounds. Even sanded the inside of this thing to as thin as I could. Also, this skirt that goes around it, sanded off all of that. That was like real thick, and I took that on a belt sander and just went to town on it. And the inside, of course, there's the Disco Droid in the middle, and then a battery, and then I built a kind of a little wood box, probably can't see it very good, for the speaker. So anyway, dome's real nice. It's not very fun though when it falls off and cracks. That's not a good day. When you first start rolling that thing, put some bubble wrap around the thing really good, because that seems to be the hardest thing about this, is getting that dome to stay on. Okay, now as far as the sphere, I was influenced early on again by Ed Zarek and with his build, and he used the California Quality Sphere. I'm sorry, California Quality Plastics, their polycarbonate sphere, which I used, and it's expensive. It's about $550 delivered, but it seems to be very high quality. It's durable enough to handle all the weight and stresses that goes through it. I haven't had any problems with it cracking or anything. Basically, I decided to make a little bit simpler version build than what Ed did. Since then, I know some people in the club have been printing out some of his parts, aluminum parts, not printing, but what is it, CNC or whatever. And so that might be a good deal there, but when I first saw it, I didn't want to attempt that. So I just did a simpler build without the head rotation. Now, on the other hand, I'm sorry, the head tilt. On the other hand, if I just have it sitting stationary on the stand or something, you do have head tilt. You can just, you can move it back and forth with the pendulum or even the motors to get the head tilt. Now, as far as the magnets, of course, this is 3D printed piece right here. using this larger center magnet to hold the head on, and then the 3 smaller magnets to rotate. And that seems to be the main problem I'm having right now, is head rotation. And one thing I did is I went to a slightly stronger magnet. Is actually the same size but minus the center hole, and that seemed to help hold the head on place, but I think it put more more magnetism between the dome and this mount right here, so that I can't, the head rotation is having a lot of issues. If it's rolling or tilting or something like that, I can, it seems to rotate, but not just sitting in place. Sometimes it does. Now, one of the hardest things about this is just getting everything lined up right in the center, getting these motors to be just right in the center, getting the pendulum to be back and forth. And one thing, look at the clearance on this. I mean, it's just like right there on top of it. Probably when the counterweight goes on the bottom, it will have just a little bit more clearance. So, and that's what you've got to have. And that was one of the reasons I chose not to do the 3D printed skin for the body, was that it puts a little bit more distance, maybe only a 1/4 inch. Here's one of the rings right here. But it is going to put a little bit more distance between your magnets, and everything about that needs to minimize that distance right there. But it looks like some other people doing builds that are working out better. I think probably in time they'll have a better magnetic mount that works out better. Now this has actually been helpful right here for using as a guide on how to put where to put the decals on the sphere. So that was a good print. Now, as far as what I've got here, of course, we've got a battery, we've got a motor controller, the receiver, motors, and an on-off switch. So it's fairly basic. Of course, you need to use a pretty decent servo for the pendulum. And then I'm using the servo that was recommended and the little mount that was recommended by Ed for the head rotation. It might need to be more heavy duty, I'm thinking. But of course, we've got the pendulum, moves it back and forth, how you turn the thing, and then you know, the head rotation. Trying to hold the camera and do this at the same time. And now as far as the motors, I use I think 45 RPM motors geared down that was recommended in the T&M, and they seem plenty powerful. I know on Ed's build he used the ones that are geared down more, about 22 or 23 RPMs, and that's probably fine because I'm never going to get it up to full speed. You can see how fast it can go. Now, one thing is make sure you set some acceleration and deceleration on the motor controller. That was a project in itself, you know, logging into the computer so that, you know, you start it going full speed and then let go, and then it slowly decelerates. As far as the Plan B decals, you may need to order a second set, and there could be issues matching the colors between your dome and the decals. So that's always a challenge right there. Just drilling these holes right here in the sphere, I just use nails so that they come to a point. Getting those to line up was a huge challenge. Now, as far as the body lights, I used NeoPixels. Here's a little Arduino board right here, bunch of glue around it. That's controlling it, and then here's a battery right here, because that's got to be a separate battery on the sphere, because you know you can't run it off this thing that's rotating around. And of course these NeoPixels, I just have tape on them, but you know, a lot of times that has to be adjusted right there. It doesn't seem to last forever. Then here's the connector to connect it to the other sphere to run those. Make sure you get a decent battery for those. Seems like those NeoPixels use up a lot of power. The dome seems to have a smaller battery in the dome. It can run for hours, but that one seems to that's about a 4,000 milliamp hour battery on that one. For the counterweights, I'm using these, for the main counterweights, I'm using these tungsten bucking bars. You can get them off of eBay. And one good thing about them is that they've got holes in them, and I'm using that for mounting them. And these are, you know, these are about 11, well, two of these put together is about 11 pounds, so that's about 22 pounds. And I was still getting a lot of wobble, so I got some more just little cubes, tungsten cubes right here. And the mount to put that, then I have a mount down here where I can put those pretty heavy duty bolts here to slide those through. I really like having removable counterweight. Makes it a lot easier to transport, and I'm also worried about just leaving all that weight on the thing sitting, worried that something might warp over time. I guess if anyone has any questions, email me. And, you know, I'm not saying this is the best BB-8 anyone's built, but it is a slightly simplified version of what some other people are building. Good luck.